Chapter 41-29. Kong Chiao got out of the car and walked to Sumo's car. Sumo stopped the car and turned off the engine, but she didn't get out immediately. Instead, she pretended to be indifferent. "What's the matter? Didn't you sleep enough last night?" "What do you mean sleep? Be more elegant." Kong Chiao locked the car window. "Open the door, or do I have to do it myself?" Sumo thought for a moment and opened the door. Anyway, he had been doing it all night, so he should be a weakling today. She got out of the car and held her bag in front of her. "Say it. I'm hungry." "Let's go eat," he said calmly, and then he took her bag and carried it in his hand. Sumo was stunned. "Eat? Me and you? What else?" He looked at her. "I'll eat. You watch." Sumo stood still. "I mean, why should I eat with you? I want to eat at home." Kong Chiao held her waist and stood still. "Stop it. I'm a little tired and don't want to cook. If you want to cook, I don't mind waiting for another hour." He said it very seriously. Sumo looked at him and suddenly lost her temper. She went out with him and said after a while, "Why don't you drive? I'll eat at the door. It's very convenient." He smiled. But Sumo still felt that it was a little strange. There was no fancy restaurant here, only a vegetarian restaurant. The food was good and there were many people. When she was dragged in by him and countless eyes were looking at them, Sumo wanted to scream. Kong Chiao was a celebrity, a super popular celebrity, but he didn't even wear sunglasses. He was clearly setting her up. So when he ordered, she covered her face with her hands because many people were taking pictures of them. She lowered her voice. "Kong Chiao, did you do it on purpose? What do you mean by bringing you here for dinner?" He took out his wallet and paid for the food. Then he led her to a seat by the window and said casually, "Is it wrong to order a meal with your girlfriend?" "I didn't admit that I'm your girlfriend." She gritted her teeth. "Put on your sunglasses." "I'm not blind." He refused. Sumo insisted. "You're a celebrity." Kong Chiao looked at her and when she was a little scared, he said, "But I only want to be your man." Sumo, Kong Chiao brought up her previous topic again. "You're not my girlfriend. We're just sex buddies." His voice wasn't soft, and Sumo wanted to strangle him, but there were so many people around, so she could only endure it. She held her chin in her hand and played with the chopsticks in her hand, waiting for the food to be served. Kong Chiao's gaze became much gentler. "You're still angry. I didn't even settle the score with you when your bed photos were exposed." "What kind of bed photos are those?" "They're just photos of us kissing." Sumo snorted. "Don't you have any ex-girlfriends?" "You have plenty of them." When she finished, Concho was silent. Sumo glanced at him. As for Kong Chiao, he felt a stab of pain in his heart. It was precisely because his past, in her eyes, was a male whore's past. He didn't even have the qualifications to be jealous or angry. He was angry, but he really couldn't get angry because she had seen his live version. If he continued to be angry, who knew where she would run off to? He wasn't young anymore. He had limited time to live, and he didn't want to waste it. That was it. Concho swallowed his pride. The waiter also served the dishes and recognized Kong Chiao. He even took the menu and asked Kong Chiao to sign it. Later, seeing that Kong Chiao was not arrogant, the boss came over and asked for a photo. End of chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 41-30. Kong Chiao stood there, watching Sumo snicker. He reached out and grabbed Sumo, placing her in front of him. "My wife." The boss's eyes lit up even more, and he brought his 18 waiters to take a photo with the big star. Sumo was unwilling, because this kind of photo would definitely be hung on the wall to attract customers. If she took such an obvious photo, how could she live in this neighborhood in the future? She wanted to escape, but she was very small, and Kong Chiao trapped her in his arms with one hand. His body was very hot, and it was very easy for him to hold her with one hand. Sumo had to admit that it was not a small pleasure to lean against his tall and sturdy body. She simply leaned against him, but she didn't expect that Kong Chiao would be even more shameless. He put his hands around her waist and rested his chin on her shoulder, which was an extremely intimate position. Sumo struggled a little, but he refused to let go, and even chuckled. "Mrs. Kong, pay attention to the camera." In the end, the photo was of her looking at him from the side, and he was also looking at her. Very, very, very loving. The boss was very satisfied, and said that he would wash dozens of photos and hang them everywhere. Sumo was so embarrassed that she had already gone to eat in silence. Kong Chiao sat opposite her. "Are you thinking about moving?" "How did you know?" Sumo cut him off and glared at him. Kong Chiao laughed. "My place is quite spacious, and I don't know if someone would do me the honor. I don't want to live with a man," she said in a small voice. Kong Chiao heard it, and then asked, "What about marriage? Would that be better?" She couldn't bear to listen to it. "How long have we known each other?" Kong Chiao said slowly, "It seems like many years." Sumo snorted. "You think I'm small?" "Did I?" As he ate, he took the time to speak very slowly. "Did I make you think that I despised you last night because you're a small hun? I think I took good care of them. You were very happy last night, and they were very comforted." Sumo was even more frightened. "Kong Chiao, I'm eating." He smiled and did not say anything else. After dinner, a group of people blocked the entrance, asking for Kong Chiao's autograph. Kong Chiao put on his sunglasses and politely said coldly, "I'm sorry, I'm eating with my wife and we don't want to be disturbed." Sumo didn't know what to say. She couldn't say that she wasn't his wife, could she? At this moment, Kong Chiao took her hand and strolled around leisurely. "Let's walk for a while before going home." She gritted her teeth. "We should go back to our own homes." "Really?" He was still holding her hand. "Let's go to the convenience store in front to buy something." She thought he was buying cigarettes, and he really did buy cigarettes. Something happened. Back. Smoke. Don't ask her how she knew. Because after he bought the cigarettes, he also smoked 2 boxes of large condoms and paid the bill together. Sumo really didn't want to admit that she was his wife. She wanted to leave, but the entrance was filled with his fans. She suddenly had a bold thought. He was doing this on purpose, dragging her here. In the future, everyone would know that she had slept with him and used a few boxes of t-shirts. Sumo was infuriated, but no matter how angry she was, she still pretended to be affectionate as she leaned against his back and pinched his waist with both hands. "Stop it, I'm paying. We'll do it when we get home." His voice was elegant and pleasant, and he was good-looking, charming everyone. Everyone understood what he meant. Kong Chiao's wife or girlfriend couldn't wait to go home and do it. When Sumo went out, she was furious and walked in front of him, ignoring him. He wanted to hold her hand, but she ignored him. Chapter 41-31. Kong Chiao was not angry and just followed behind her. "Why are you angry? Isn't that how couples usually do things?" Sumo asked him, "Are we husband and wife?" He looked at her and smiled. "Aren't we husband and wife? We've already slept together. What are we if not husband and wife?" He held her hand and played with it in his palm, not caring about the gazes around them. Sumo bit her lip. Are you trying to make it so that I can't stay here anymore? Is it that obvious? He smiled. Sumo gritted her teeth. Kong Qiao, do you know that you're a special bastard? Kong Qiao smiled. Really? I think I'm very considerate. For example, I know that you want to do it tonight. Sumo bit her lip. No. I want to. He pulled her to stand under a tree and pulled her over. She wanted to shake him off. Kong Qiao, can you be a little more respectful and respect other people's choices? Do it with me or I'll find someone else. He looked at her seriously. Do you want me to find someone else? A lot of women. I'll sleep in this woman's bed tonight and another woman's bed tomorrow. Do you want me to be like this? She glared at him. He continued shamelessly. You've taken in so many people. Why don't you add me? Sumo, if you don't want to be with me, I'll let you see how I fall. He was blatantly threatening her. Sumo was furious. Up to you. You're so cruel. He smiled and pinched her face, his gaze indulgent and doting. Then, he lowered his head and kissed her. She wanted to push him away, but his kissing skills were too good. She was angry and anxious. She punched his shoulder hard and said in a muffled voice, "You, male whore." She was so anxious that she even said those words. Kong Qiao was originally trying to coax her, but her words inevitably reminded him of what had happened before. He let go of her lips and glared at her for a long time before saying in a low voice, "Do you want to see how a male whore pleases a sugar daddy?" His tone was full of danger. Sumo was shocked and looked up. He was smiling, but there was no smile in his eyes at all. It was full of bitterness. Sumo clenched his fists. "Jiangzhua, you bastard. Bastard, I'll serve you once too." His voice was low and husky as he carried her horizontally. What for? Anxious, she reached out to hit him, but he didn't care. He directly brought her back to her apartment, closed the door, and carried her into the master bedroom. He found the tie at the head of the bed, fastened it around her, and put it over the head of the bed. Then he half knelt in front of her and took off his coat. His fingers stroked the buttons of his shirt, and he gently unbuttoned them, one by one. His movements were very seductive, comparable to a male prostitute. Even Sumo, who was used to seeing all kinds of handsome men in the entertainment industry, couldn't help but be tempted at this time. She licked her lower lip and stared at him. "What are you doing?" He unbuckled his belt and chuckled. "What do you think?" Sumo was so scared that he closed his eyes. "I'm telling you, don't act recklessly. I'll call the police." "Sure." He stuffed the phone into her hands and even dialed 110 for her. Then, he leaned over her body and began to plunder, saying while enjoying himself, "Call the police. I've already dialed for you. Scream for help and tell them that Kong Qiao is raping you." Sumo bit down on her lips. "Don't think that I won't dare to." He chuckled and bit down hard on her soft neck. The call connected. On the other side, a gentle voice sounded. "Hello, this is the XX District Police Station." End of Chapter 1. Chapter 4132. Sumo was stunned. Hearing the voice on the other end, she wanted to say something, but Kong Qiao had already kissed her. All of a sudden, she couldn't even hold her phone. She bit her lip and desperately moved her head back. The voice on the other end was still repeating, "This is XX Police Station, how can I help you?" Sumo raised her head, her translucent and fair throat trembling. She bit her lip and tried her best to speak in the most ordinary tone. "I'm sorry, I called the wrong number. The phone was thrown aside, and her eyes were a little wet, which made her look very lovely. Kong Chao didn't care about the phone, moved his head over, held her face in his hands, and said in a low voice, "You can't bear to do that to me, huh?" Su Mo glared at him and closed her eyes slightly. "Kong Chao, do you know that you are a bastard?" She didn't want to cry, but she still cried. Her tears fell and seeped into the pillow. She knew that she couldn't escape, so she buried her face in the pillow and didn't say anything. Kong Chao suddenly became gentle and kissed her lightly. "Are you angry?" She didn't say anything, buried her face, and cried. "Why are you crying?" Kong Chao coaxed her. "I was just teasing you. If you don't want to do it, then don't do it, huh?" He reached out, untied the tie on her hand, and rubbed her fingers gently. "If you don't want to, then don't do it. Be good, don't cry." He moved his face closer and sucked the tears from the corner of her eyes. She was still crying, and he coaxed her patiently, but she seemed to cry even harder. Kong Chao murmured in a sexy voice, "I'm coaxing you, why are you still crying?" "None of your business." Her voice was hoarse, and she didn't want to look at him, so she turned her face away. Kong Chao chased after her and kissed her. Spoiled women were usually very fierce. She kicked him. Male whore. Her hand was suddenly held high, and the surroundings suddenly became dangerous. Kong Chao's eyes were full of danger. "Anything is fine, but don't call me that in the future." "None of your business." She was a little willful, and her eyes were red. Kong Chao felt a little sorry for her. In fact, he knew that she minded. If they were still the same as before and just slept together, she wouldn't mind, but she wasn't. Whenever she was with him, she would think of the past. She couldn't let it go, or perhaps she hadn't truly forgiven him. Forgive his abandonment, forgive his confusion. Kong Chao knew that he had to give her time and space, but he didn't want to give it. If he gave it to her, she would probably fly away, so he would rather tie her up, even if he had to break her wings to keep her. Kong Chao held her tenderly in his arms, his face close to hers. After a while she struggled against him, and he held her with more strength. "Don't move, don't move." Su Mo bit his lips. "Kong Chao, let go of me. Really, let go." "No." His voice was hoarse. "Not in this lifetime." With that, he moved his face close to her ear and said hoarsely, "I won't let you go again." Su Mo's eyes became hot, and she bit her lip. "Go away." "I'm not leaving." He kissed the back of her ear. "Momo, I won't leave again, okay?" She didn't say a word, buried her face in the wet pillow, and ignored him. Kong Chao suddenly smiled and leaned over to bite her lips. He paused again. "Are you ignoring me because I didn't do it with you?" End of this chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 4133. Su Mo was shocked. She turned around and glared at him. He was so shameless. Kong Chao kissed her chin and then the back of her ear. He sounded like he was begging for sex. "But I want to do it. I haven't done it for many days." She couldn't help but feel her throat tighten. "Didn't you do it last night?" Kong Chao laughed and leaned over to kiss her. His voice was also hoarse. "I wasn't satisfied last night." As he spoke, he took her hand and moved it downwards for her to feel it. The atmosphere suddenly changed, and there was a hint of heat in the air. Su Mo bit her lip and glared at him. Kong Chao coaxed her. "Just once, huh?" In the end, a man's words couldn't be trusted. If he did it once, he would do it a second time, a third time, or even countless times. After that night, Suemo kicked Kong Qiao out of the house and changed the door lock. She wouldn't let him in again. However, in the following days, she always felt that people would look at her whenever she walked in the neighborhood or ate in the neighborhood. There were even young girls holding notebooks and asking for her autograph because she was Kong Qiao's wife. Suemo was speechless. She called Wen Yuan and asked for advice. Wen Yuan lay on the bed and waited for Yi Mubai to come out. She held the phone and smiled. Do you want to break up with him completely? Suemo felt a little guilty. No, I just don't want him to be too serious. You're afraid of hurting him. Wen Yuan hit the nail on the head. Afraid that you can't give him happiness. Suemo didn't say anything. Wen Yuan held the phone with one hand and drew circles on the bedsheet with the other. Suemo, you're wrong. Kong Qiao is giving you happiness now. You just need to accept it. As for how much you give, I don't think he will mind for the time being. The one who cares about you is the one who gives more. As soon as she finished speaking, a warm and strong body leaned over and whispered into her ear. Are you a relationship expert now? Wen Yuan patted her back. Stop fooling around. I'm talking to Suemo. Yi Mubai smiled and turned over to lean against the bed. His voice was a little hoarse. Hurry up. Wen Yuan glanced at him, but his face blushed a little. CEO Yi couldn't wait any longer. He grabbed her and held her in his arms. Wen Yuan's body softened under his touch. She bit her lips and protested, Kong Qiao. If you don't want to be broadcasted by Suemo, then hang up. He bit her ear gently. Wen Yuan pushed him away. Stop fooling around. You do your thing, I'll do mine, okay? Yi Mubai held her waist and started to move. Wen Yuan was speechless. He bit his lip and said, wait. He smiled and stopped gracefully. However, when Wen Yuan spoke to Suemo again, Suemo had already hung up. What a joke. She didn't want to hear about the palace of love. Wen Yuan put down his phone and glared at the man. Yi Mubai, you're always like this. Now, he was not in a hurry. He grabbed Wen Yuan and placed him on his lap, pulling his wife's hair from time to time. Don't be too nosy about their affairs. Kong Qiao just needs to put in a bit of effort into it. I can't just ignore it. Wen Yuan said helplessly. Besides, isn't Suemo our friend? She's your friend. To me, she's going to be a traitor. CEO Yi snorted, took out a cigarette and lit it with a lighter. Wen Yuan was against him smoking at home, but he rarely did that, so she put up with it. Chapter 4134. Wen Yuan was still looking at him. What do you mean? Yi Mubai looked down. Why do you think Kong Qiao still doesn't have an agent? He has his eyes on Suemo. She could be his wife and his agent. It was killing two birds with one stone. It was a great idea. Suemo was someone cultivated by Yi Mubai. Now that he had given her to Qin Mo, of course he wouldn't be happy. It was a great loss. Wen Yuan looked at him. Are you angry about this? CEO Yi snorted. What else? Wen Yuan leaned into his arms and said softly, I think Tang Qiao will eventually go solo, and I don't think he will always be in the entertainment industry. Just like when you have a family, you will want to change your career, right? Otherwise, it will be very hard for him to be separated from Suemo. I don't think he can take it. Wen Yuan had just finished speaking when Yi Mubai pinched her chin and chuckled. What do you think he can't take it? Is it because he doesn't have a woman to sleep with? Wen Yuan slapped his hand away and said in a sweet voice, I didn't say that. He dragged her back again, and his thin lips touched hers. He chuckled. Are you worried that I don't have a woman to sleep with when I'm outside? Will you sleep with me? He was talking nonsense. When Yuan couldn't take it anymore and wanted to strangle him, in a luxurious apartment in B City. Huan opened the door and came in. Qin Mo was watching TV with Huan in his arms and saying something softly. Hearing the door open, he looked up. So late. Huan looked at her watch. It's only 10. Qin Mo's handsome face turned cold. You used the word only very well. Mrs. Qin, do you know that you are married now? Huan didn't want to argue with him, especially in front of Huan. She put down her bag and squatted in front of Huan. Why aren't you sleeping? Huan didn't see her often, but she still liked her. After all, she was her biological daughter. Huan was very beautiful. She had a shiny black doll's hair, and her facial features were exquisite. Her eyes were big and bright, making her look very cute. She stretched out her little finger. I'm waiting for Mommy to come home. Huan smiled gently. Mommy has to work, so I'll be a little late sometimes. In the future, Huan can sleep first and don't have to wait for Mommy. However, Huan insisted, Daddy has to work too, but Daddy won't come home so late. After saying that, Huan looked at Huan cautiously. The anticipation in her eyes was heart-wrenching. Huan did not know what to say at that moment. Qin Mo said calmly, all right, Mommy is back. Daddy will take you to shower and sleep, okay? Huan looked at her mother stubbornly. I want Mommy to wash it for me. Huan was already a few years old. She felt that it was time for her mother to bathe her. Huan was stunned for a moment, then she smiled. Okay, Mommy will wash it for you. The moment she said that, Qin Mo looked at her thoughtfully and did not say anything. Huan brought little Huan into the bathroom while Qin Mo stood by the door. She coughed gently. Can you bring a set of her pajamas over? I don't know where to put it. Qin Mo was still leaning against the wall. After a while, he smiled. Huan, you're really a good mother. Huan was a little annoyed. She said to him in English, you can change it if you're not satisfied. His handsome face had a hint of coldness. Then, he sneered and said in Mandarin, I don't remember marrying a fake foreigner. End of chapter. Chapter 41-35. But after saying that, he still went to get a set of one-piece pajamas. Huan took it and looked at it. Will it be inconvenient for me to take it off and go to the toilet? Qin Mo's eyes darkened. Huan has long passed the age of wetting the bed. After that, his slender body went straight out. Huan always felt that he was angry. She was not afraid of him being angry. Anyway, she had been like this for so many years. Huan gave Huan a bath. She filled the pink bathtub with hot water. Huan was definitely well raised. It could be seen from the pink bathtub that it was custom-made by Disney. Her big head and small body were soaking in the bathtub. She looked very cute. Even Huan, who didn't have much maternal love, especially liked it. She had never taken care of Huan, so she was not good at washing. Not to mention that she was in a hurry, the water was cold after washing. The little fellow sneezed after being carried out. Huan immediately helped her put on the clothes. Because it was difficult to put on the one-piece pajamas, it took her a while. After putting on the clothes, little Huan hugged her. Mommy, hug me. Children were always clingy and wanted to be loved by adults. Huan hugged her. Mommy's clothes are wet. Go back to the room and sleep, okay? Huan rubbed against her for a long time, and then she was dejected and looked cute. Huan smiled. Fortunately, at the door, Qin Mo held the little fellow in his arms. He frowned as soon as he held her up. "Why is it so cold?" Huan said, "The water was a little cold just now." Qin Mo glanced at her, and then said very lightly, "She is still young and can't get cold at all. Be careful next time." Huan said yes, and then wanted to go back to the master bedroom to change clothes or take a bath. Qin Mo held Huan in his arms and looked at her quietly for a few seconds. It seemed that he wanted to say something, but then he gave up. He carried the little fellow back to the bedroom, held her in his arms until she was warm, and then told her a story. Then Huan fell asleep slowly. Qin Mo stayed with her for about 10 minutes before turning off the lights and returning to the master bedroom. Huan had already showered and was sitting on the sofa in her bathrobe. She was reading a few pages of paper. It was probably a script or something. Qin Mo walked over and stood beside her. His tall figure blocked the light, casting a shadow over Huan's head. She looked up. Qin Mo snatched the paper from her hand and said calmly, "Apart from work and reading these contracts and scripts, don't you ever think about your child?" Huan looked up. "I just gave her a bath." Qin Mo threw the things aside and grabbed her hand to force her to stand up. He easily held her waist with one hand. Their bodies were so different that he had to lower his head to look at her. His voice was slightly hoarse. "Do you think you're a good mother just because you give your child a bath? Huan, do you still remember her birthday? Do you know what she likes to eat, what she's allergic to, and what kind of dress she likes the most?" Huan was speechless. After a long time, she bit her lip and said, "I wanted a child at that time." Qin Mo's expression changed, and his arm holding her waist tightened. "You mean I didn't want Huan at that time?" Huan didn't answer this question. She felt that the child had been born, and Huan had grown up, so there was no need to discuss this issue. Huan was indeed an accident. At least for her. Although it was an accident, it was also within his calculations. She didn't want it at that time, because at that time. Chapter 41-36. She didn't want it at that time because she was disappointed with Qin Mo. He forced her to have sex with him and that was how she got Huan. He named the child Qin Huan. She knew what he meant, but she only felt that it was ironic. If he really cared about her, he wouldn't have treated her like that. Huan remained silent. Qin Mo's expression became deep and dangerous. "I thought you cared about her a little." "I don't care about her." "Do you think we can maintain this marriage?" Huan asked. Qin Mo narrowed his eyes, lifted her chin with one hand and asked softly, "Are you really doing this for Huan? Are you sure you're not doing this for that vegetable called Rongyu?" Huan's small body had a large capacity. She stared at him and said, "Rongyu woke up." "Yes, so your mind is alive again. You don't dare to divorce because you're afraid that I'll deal with him, right? But you can't forget him, so you took his script and asked Kong Qiao to act in it. Huan, do you think I'm a fool? Or do you think that you don't need to care about my feelings? You can do whatever you want and pursue your spiritual love, right?" Qin Mo's hand gently caressed her red lips as he softly spat out a few cold words. "Last Saturday, where were you?" "At his book signing event." "What did he write in his book? Can you explain it to me?" Huan was a little embarrassed. She bit her lips and said, "I don't need to explain anything to you." "That's right." He nodded in agreement. "For you, I'm just a substitute, a photo. Now that the main character is back, my appearance is useless to you." As he said that, he moved his thin lips behind her ear and said in a hoarse voice, but Juan, you're my wife now. No matter who you're thinking about, you have to go home. Sleep with me and make love to me. Juan couldn't listen to it anymore. She turned her head away and said, "Stop it. Did I hit your sore spot?" He smiled coldly. "Or you're not even willing to make love to me when you see him." Juan was furious. She broke free from him and undid the belt of her bathrobe. "Aren't you going to do it? If you're going to do it, then hurry up." Chinamo stared at her face for a while, then slowly moved his gaze downwards. After scanning her face, he coldly said, "I'm not that desperate." Juan folded her clothes and sat on the sofa. She supported herself with one hand and murmured, "Chinamo, can't we just let each other go? Do you feel that you love me very much?" She smiled and looked up. "If you love me, why would you bring a woman home to spend the night? Don't make yourself sound so innocent. In our marriage, the only innocent one is Juan." Chinmo's body froze, and his fingers curled into fists. "I didn't do anything with her. I was drunk, and she sent me back. That's all." "Chinmo." Juan looked down. "You said that you didn't touch her, but she had a miscarriage 2 months later. Why were you in the hospital with her?" Chinmo's expression was unprecedentedly serious. Juan looked tired. "You didn't have anything to do with her. Why did you take care of her for the past few years? You went in and out of her apartment, and even didn't return at night. Not to mention that you and her are innocent, let alone that you kept yourself chaste for me. I never slept with her." Chinmo gritted his teeth. "Juan, don't be unreasonable. Calm. Wonderful book house." Chapter 41-37. You didn't sleep with me. I didn't sleep with Romeo either. I didn't stay at his place for a night, nor did I hang out with him at the gynecology department. Juan's fingers gently touched her forehead. "I was pregnant when she had the miscarriage. I saw it with my own eyes, and I didn't mean to investigate you. Now, are you still going to say that it has nothing to do with you?" Chinamo grabbed her and pressed her against the sofa. Juan felt a little dizzy. When she came back to her senses, his face was a little gloomy. He squinted at her and stared at her. "Why didn't you tell me earlier? Tell you that you had an abortion with another woman when I was pregnant?" Juan looked up at him. "I'm sorry, you're not worth it. It's me who lowered my self-esteem. Then who is qualified? Romeo. Seducing him when he was married and trying to get in touch with him." Chinamo pinched her chin hard. Her skin was particularly sensitive, so her chin was soon bruised. When he let go, it was as if she had done some special service for him. Chinamo was still staring at her. "Tell me, am I right? Did you buy the copyright of his book because you wanted to relive old dreams with him? You said that you didn't sleep with him. Do you really want to sleep with him? He's a vegetable. Can he satisfy you like I do?" He became more and more obscene. Juan struggled, but he held her firmly and did not let her move. In the end, she was angry and reached out to slap him. When the crisp sound of the slap rang out, the surrounding air froze. Chinmo's eyes were very scary. He stared at her eyes. "In your heart, he is clean, and I am dirty, right?" Juan turned her face away and did not want to talk to him anymore. "Why aren't you answering?" He grabbed her hand and pressed it above her head. He narrowed his eyes. "Since you don't want to say it, then do it. I don't care who you have in your heart, as long as you moan under my body." Juan, do you want to know that every time you pretend not to want it, you can't help but hug me and refuse to let go? At that time, did you still have your moonlight in your heart?" He was extremely rude to her and sneered, if Rongyu had seen you like this, would he still think that you're the innocent girl in his heart? Would he still be able to write such a novel? Rongyu was speechless when he saw the way he treated her. As he spoke, he kissed her crazily. He kissed her lips, her neck, and his heart ached. This was probably what it was like to love someone but not be able to get it. She did not love him. She only wanted to believe what she saw, not him. Chi Nemo did have a woman before, but it was before marriage. That child was also not his. He was not interested in explaining, he just wanted to sleep with her. Of course, Huan didn't want him to do this. She struggled and said in a hoarse voice, "Let go. I don't want it." He grabbed her hand and pinned her down. He doesn't even want to have sex with me anymore. Huan, don't forget that you're my wife and I'm your man. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and pulled, easily succeeding. Huan screamed and rubbed her face against his shoulder. She could not stand it when he was especially rough. "Are you still thinking about him?" His voice was sexy and husky. He was panting as he kissed her so forcefully that it was as if he wanted to swallow her whole. Chapter 41:38. The more she resisted, the more rough he was with her. This was the first time he had treated her so roughly. He wanted to be gentler, but he couldn't stop his anger. Just like that, he was a little out of control. Eventually, he became gentler and got the taste. He held her face and kissed it lightly, his voice hoarse. "You just like to make me angry, don't you? Huan, don't contact him anymore, huh? If you want to shoot a script, I'll get someone to write it for you. You can shoot as many as you want." Huan tilted her face and bit the pillow. Then, she couldn't help but clench her fists and bite them gently, resisting the pleasure he brought. Just when both of them were deeply immersed in the love jade, the door creaked open. Huan was standing at the door, holding a baby in her arms. Her voice was a little faint. "Daddy, my head is very dizzy and it hurts a little." Chi Nemo was feeling warm, but he stopped very quickly. He cursed softly and covered Huan with the quilt. He immediately pulled up his pants and jumped off the bed, carrying Huan with one hand. "Are you not feeling well?" Her head was very hot. Huan also put on her clothes awkwardly. Chi Nemo looked at her. "Huan has a fever. Bring the thermometer over and get a glass of water." Since the little one was sick, their interest as parents was naturally gone. At this moment, they were only worried. Huan immediately went to get the thermometer for Chi Nemo. After Chi Nemo put it down, Huan went to get a glass of water. She tested the temperature of the water and didn't give it to Huan immediately. Instead, she squatted at the side. She asked softly, "Does she have a fever often?" Chi Nemo glanced at her. His gaze was a little deep as he said faintly, "Not often." Under his gaze, Huan suddenly understood. "She caught a cold because I helped her bathe." This time, Chi Nemo didn't answer her. He just took out the thermometer and looked at it quietly. 39 degrees. "You have to go to the hospital." Chi Nemo looked at Huan and asked softly, "Will she need an injection?" "Maybe." He kissed the baby and took the glass from Huan's hand. "Good boy, drink half a glass of water. Daddy will take you to the hospital." Huan looked at Huan cautiously. "Mom, are you going?" Chi Nemo glanced at her again, then coughed lightly and said, "Go." Huan said happily, "Then let's go to the hospital immediately." He was so happy to go to the hospital even though he was in a daze from the fever. Confused, Huan looked at Chi Nemo. Chi Nemo's expression was very calm. She used to go to the hospital and ask other children why their mothers were holding them when they were getting injections. She said she was born out of a rock. Huan didn't know how to refute him, but he felt a little guilty towards Yi-Hwan. She had given birth to the child, but she was angry with him and did not take good care of him. Chi-Nemo picked up the little fellow and walked straight to her bedroom. He put on his clothes, shoes, and coat, and his movements were particularly swift. After he was done, he stood up with the little fellow in his arms and said to Yi-Hwan, "Take your bag. You and Yi-Hwan will sit in the back seat later." Yi-Hwan nodded and followed behind him. Chi-Nemo had been very calm, but he walked very fast. He strode into the elevator and went out quickly. In the garage, he opened the car door and let Yi-Hwan get in first. Then he held Yi-Hwan in his arms. "Coax her. She has a little temper when she is sick." In fact, this was a little similar to Yi-Hwan. Yi-Hwan was also like this when she was sick. He used to coax her a lot. However, she didn't care at all. She still liked someone else. She never liked him and never took Chi-Nemo seriously. He didn't understand how he was inferior to that man. End of this chapter. Chapter 41-39. Chi-Nemo's tone was very calm, but Yi-Hwan could tell from his words that he was unhappy. She wondered if she was overthinking. Chi-Nemo didn't say anything else and drove straight away. Yi-Hwan held Yi-Hwan in her arms and felt that her forehead was a little hot. She couldn't help but ask, "Chi-Nemo, how far is the nearest hospital?" "It's a 10-minute drive." "It's not very good to go to the nearest hospital." Chi-Nemo's voice was a little deep in the night. Yi-Hwan grunted and then put her face on Yi-Hwan. "Baby, are you feeling uncomfortable?" Yi-Hwan grunted. "I feel dizzy and want to sleep, but I can't." "Mom, will I die of illness?" "Nonsense, you won't. You'll be fine after an injection and medicine." Yi-Hwan didn't know how to coax children. She thought of how her parents had coaxed her when she was young. Yi-Hwan's fever was a little heavy, and her voice became a little softer. "But Mom, I don't want to take medicine, and I don't want to have an injection either. It's very painful. Let Dad do it for me, okay?" Yi-Hwan laughed. "What's the use of injecting Dad?" Yi-Hwan lay on her stomach and thought for a while. She looked up and said, "But when Dad is not feeling well, if you give Mom an injection, Dad seems to be very happy when he gets better." Yi-Hwan took a long time to understand what Yi-Hwan meant. Her face was a little hot, so she turned to the side. Chi-Nemo, who was in the front, said, "Dad's discomfort is different from yours." Yi-Hwan wanted to ask why, but because of the high fever and pain all over her body, she closed her eyes and fell asleep after a while. Yi-Hwan lowered her head and looked at the little girl. She said softly, "She's asleep." Chi-Nemo didn't say anything. In such silence, Yi-Hwan thought of what Yi-Hwan had said before about the injection, and gradually felt a little uncomfortable. Fortunately, Chi-Nemo didn't say anything and just drove. The quiet night became even quieter because of the silence. In the narrow space, there was only Yi-Hwan's warm breath. A few minutes later, the car arrived at the hospital. Chi-Nemo got out of the car, picked up Yi-Hwan, and asked Yi-Hwan to help him put on his coat. Then, he walked quickly to the emergency room. The doctor checked and asked a few more questions before scolding, "You must be careful when you bathe. If the water is too cold, of course you will catch a cold. As a parent, you must have common sense." Yi-Hwan stood there without saying a word. Chi-Nemo, on the other hand, watched as director he, who was usually awe-inspiring, was now being lectured like a primary school student in front of a doctor. His anger subsided a little, and he asked calmly, "Do you need an injection?" The doctor pushed up his glasses. "Give him a shot to reduce the fever and take some anti-inflammatory drugs. Go back and observe. If he has a high fever, drink some cooling medicine. It's best to lower his body physically. Chin Mo nodded. Okay. The doctor wrote out the bill. Pay up, then get the medicine for the injection. Chin Mo carried Yi Huan while Yi Huan followed behind him. He was very tall, so Yi Huan was like a shadow following behind him. Occasionally, she would suddenly think that if it wasn't for Chin Mo, she would definitely be in a difficult situation. Thinking about it this way, she didn't find him so annoying. Chin Mo waited by the side with Yi Huan in his arms. Yi Huan paid the fee, took the medicine, and went to get an injection. During the injection, Yi Huan stared at the syringe for a long time. When the injection was over, Yi Huan burst into tears and buried her face in Chin Mo's arms. Daddy, I don't want an injection. It hurts. Little girls were very cute when they acted coquettishly. Moreover, Chin Mo had always doted on her, so he carried the little baby in one arm and said in a low, husky voice that was very pleasant to the ears, "It'll be fine in a while, just like a mosquito taking a bite." End of chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 4140. Why does a mosquito want to eat me? Yi Huan cried. It's so small. Why does it want to eat me? Wah! Chin Mo had no choice but to coax her patiently. This little girl was always like this after every injection. Yi Huan stood at the side and looked at the father and daughter. Just now, she thought that she wouldn't be so embarrassed with Chin Mo around. But now, she suddenly felt that she was a little unnecessary. Just like Chin Mo said, she hadn't asked Yi Huan about it all these years. He had asked her, apart from the fact that she gave birth to Yi Huan, apart from the fact that Yi Huan was born from her belly, was Yi Huan still considered her child? Yi Huan's eyes were a little hot. Looking at Yi Huan's young face, there was an indescribable feeling in her heart. She looked at them quietly. After a long time, Chin Mo got up with Yi Huan in his arms. Let's go. Yi Huan came back to her senses. Are you done? Yi Huan said pitifully, it hurts. She leaned over and let Yi Huan hug her. Yi Huan took over and hugged her, but Chin Mo took over and walked downstairs. Yi Huan followed beside him. You can go home now. What else? She's hospitalized because of a slight fever. He said simply, go home and take care of her. Yi Huan didn't say anything else. She felt that he was in a bad mood and she didn't want to touch him. In the car, Chin Mo asked her to take off Yi Huan's coat and feed Yi Huan some water. Yi Huan took a bottle. It was plain water that Chin Mo poured for her. She was a little confused. She's already so big. Why does she still need this? Chin Mo started the car and said calmly, she's quite persistent about this. The car drove out of the hospital. Outside the car, the night was gentle. Chin Mo's eyes were like ink in such a dark night. He continued to say, maybe she hasn't felt the warmth of a mother. Yi Huan was mocked by him again. She didn't want to talk to him anymore and lowered her head to feed Yi Huan water. As expected, Yi Huan was very persistent about this. She held it in her arms and drank it. She looked very reluctant to part with it, which made Yi Huan feel a little guilty. Yi Huan drank the water, bit the bottle, and quickly fell asleep. However, her little face was still burning hot and abnormally red. Yi Huan gently caressed her little face and tried to remove the bottle with one hand, but the sleeping little person immediately hugged it tightly and refused to let go. He was very persistent. Yi Huan was stunned and felt a little sour in his heart. Chin Mo didn't say anything. The car drove back to his place. Chin Mo was still carrying Yi Huan, and Yi Huan was following behind with her things. When they got home, he carried Yi Huan directly to the bed in the master bedroom. He helped Yi Huan take off her coat and change into a set of two-piece pajamas. The little girl woke up and rolled around happily when she found that it was her father's bed. It seemed that she used to sleep with Qin Mo often in the past. Yi Huan felt that she was an outsider and a third party again. Qin Mo bent down and asked gently, "Do you want Daddy to carry you to the bathroom?" She didn't know what Yi Huan said, but Qin Mo carried the little girl and went to the bathroom. After a while, he carried her back and put her on the bed and covered her with the quilt. He looked at Yi Huan and said, "Pour a glass of water." Yi Huan said yes. When she walked out, there was an indescribable feeling in her heart. It was as if everything they had argued about others had disappeared, and the only thing left in the world was Yi Huan's illness. She even felt that it was unreal. She couldn't describe it herself. She poured a glass of water and put it down gently. Qin Mo glanced at her and then fed Yi Huan the medicine. It was natural for a child to be coaxed after taking the medicine, but Qin Mo didn't show any impatience. End of chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 41-41. After feeding Yi Huan the medicine, Qin Mo held the cup and gently touched the little girl's forehead with the other finger. He felt a little relieved when he felt that the fever had gone down a little. He looked up and saw Yi Huan standing there. He smiled faintly. "Don't you want to take a bath?" He had done half of it before, so he felt uncomfortable now. Yi Huan misunderstood his meaning. She paused and whispered, "Then I'll sleep in the guest room after I take a bath." Without waiting for him to answer, she went outside. Her wrist was caught. Qin Mo put down the cup in his hand and rubbed his forehead with one hand. "When did I say that you were going to sleep in the guest room?" "Yi Huan is sleeping here," Yi Huan said softly. Qin Mo looked at the child and also lowered his voice. "Do you think that a husband and wife sleep in the same bed just to make love?" Yi Huan didn't say anything. That was what she thought of him in her heart. So, Qin Mo's face became a little ugly. He reached out and dragged her to his side. He looked up at her and said, "Yi Huan is sick. Don't you need to take care of her as a mother?" Yi Huan's lips moved. "I thought you didn't need it." "It doesn't matter whether I need it or not. The important thing is that Yi Huan needs it." Qin Mo said very softly, "Yi Huan, I can support you when you work. But in this family, you can ignore me, but Yi Huan is your child." As he said that, he suddenly dragged her to his side and hugged her tightly, as if he wanted to break her waist. "Yi Huan, do you still have any consciousness as a mother? She was born when you were pregnant for 10 months. She is so cute. How can you not care about her?" Qin Mo's voice was a little tense, with patience and restraint. Yi Huan was a little surprised. She didn't know that he suddenly became like this. This Qin Mo looked a little fragile, not as strong as usual. She looked down at his black hair and hesitated. She put her hand on his shoulder. "I don't care about her." Qin Mo said hoarsely, "If you cared about her, would you sleep in the guest room when she had a high fever?" "Yi Huan, what exactly do you want?" "Do I want a lot?" "Do Yi Huan want a lot?" "How can you be so heartless?" He leaned his face against her waist and his voice was extremely hoarse. "How can you be so heartless? How can you be so indifferent? You said you wanted Yi Huan after the divorce. How can I be at ease with a mother like you? Tell me, how will you take care of her?" Yi Huan was stunned and could not speak for a long time. She could only feel that Qin Mo's heart was beating very fast, and his skin was very hot. She suspected that Yi Huan had also infected him with a high fever. Otherwise, why would he be so hot? Yi Huan pushed him. Chin Mo, let go of me. I'm going to take a shower and stay with her. However, Chin Mo did not let go of her. Not only did he not let go, but he hugged her even more tightly. His thin lips kissed her waist and abdomen through her clothes, as if he wanted to confuse her. It was not because of the love jade. When Yi Huan was sick, he did not have such thoughts. He was just sure that this despicable woman was still by his side. This despicable woman was still by his side. She did not leave and did not abandon him and Yi Huan. She did not. She left 3 days after giving birth to Yi Huan. Chin Mo was completely obsessed. It was as if he did not care and only the two of them were left in the world. Chin Mo, Yi Huan was shocked and put her hand on his shoulder. Be rational. Yi Huan is sick. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 41-42. She pounded him with all her might. Chin Mo seemed to have finally calmed down, but his face was still close to hers as he said softly, "Do you think I want to do it with you? Yi Huan, do you really think I'm only interested in the pleasure of being one with you? What's the use if I'm not that person?" Yi Huan's breathing was a little messy as she looked down at him. Just a few minutes ago, they seemed to have broken some sort of balance between them. All these years, she rarely came back. Once or twice a year, they only made love. He didn't ask for her feelings either. Maybe he was angry, but what did he mean by saying these words now? Yi Huan didn't understand, and she didn't want to understand. She pushed against him and slowly moved away from his embrace. This time, Chin Mo let go of her. Yi Huan went to take a shower and came back in a short while. Lying beside Yi Huan, she reached out to touch Yi Huan's forehead and asked him softly, "Aren't you going to take a shower?" Chin Mo looked at her again and his Adam's apple bobbed a few times before he walked out. "I'm going to smoke." The man who was so fragile just now probably regretted it and needed to calm down now. Yi Huan thought that he might have to sleep in the guest room, but half an hour later, Chin Mo came back to the master bedroom after taking a shower. He lay on the other side of Yi Huan and half leaned against the headboard to take Yi Huan's temperature. Only when it dropped to 37 degrees did he feel relieved and closed his eyes. "Sleep for a while. You might have a relapse tonight." Yi Huan licked her lips. She really didn't know much about children's illnesses. "Oh," she replied and closed her eyes in a panic. She didn't know when she fell asleep. When he woke up with a start. The moment he opened his eyes, he saw Chin Mo leaning against the headboard. Little Yi Huan was sleeping in his arms. It was the kind of sleeping in his arms. It was a very doting feeling. "What's wrong with her?" Yi Huan sat up hurriedly and asked in a hoarse voice. Chin Mo didn't look at her and just focused on coaxing the child. He lowered his voice and said, "She had a fever just now. She's much better after drinking some medicine." Yi Huan scratched his short hair. "Why don't I coax her instead?" Chin Mo glanced at her, then carried the little fellow over and placed it in her arms for her to lie down together. Perhaps it was the unique softness and warmth of a woman, little Yi Huan immediately felt comfortable and leaned over like a little animal. Her eyes were closed on her small round face, and her little face was as cute as a little angel. Yi Huan couldn't help but reach out and pinch her face. She couldn't bear to look away and just kept looking at her. Chin Mo was still leaning against the headboard, looking quite cold and arrogant. "I've finally aroused some maternal love in you." Yi Huan was still looking at Yi Huan. "Chin Mo, you don't have to be so sharp and sarcastic. Be careful." He had lost control just now. The Chin Mo in her memory was not such a sissy. If Chin Mo had known what Yi Huan was thinking, he would probably have spent the whole night with her to prove that he was a man. But at this moment, after saying all this, she was probably too tired and didn't want to argue anymore. Chin Mo also slowly lay down. Go to sleep. It's almost 5 o'clock. Hee-hwan didn't fall asleep immediately. She looked at him sideways, then pursed her lips and said nothing. In the approaching morning, it was quiet all around. Chin Mo, Hee-hwan, her husband and child. Such an atmosphere and such a home made Hee-hwan feel strange and a little helpless. She was indeed not a good mother, and she had never thought about how to be a mother. She loved Hee-hwan. Otherwise, Chin Mo wouldn't have kept her in suspense with Hee-hwan for so many years. But apart from loving Hee-hwan, she really didn't know where to start. I'll update again at night. She wanted to chat with more like-minded people about new wife number 1, husband, addicted to pampering. On WeChat, she followed Yudu literature, talking about life and looking for bosom friends. Chapter 41-43. It seemed that Chin Mo loved children more. He knew how to be a good father and a good husband, but she didn't give him a chance. She didn't want to give him a chance, and he seemed to be disdainful. All these years, they had been torturing each other. They hurt her bit by bit, but it was like a knife cutting her. It was blunt and painful. Hee-hwan lay there for a long time and finally felt a little sleepy. When she calmed down, Chin Mo opened his eyes and looked at her quietly, his wife. Hee-hwan slept a little soundly. She was probably exhausted. Chin Mo looked at his little girl again. He looked at her quietly for a while before closing his eyes. He couldn't bear to sleep at such a tender moment. But he was still a little tired. He reached out and took the little thing over, holding her gently in his arms. Hee-hwan was so small. She curled up in his arms and was very obedient. Chin Mo lowered his head and kissed her. Later, everything became more peaceful and beautiful. Hee-hwan didn't sleep well. She slept in Chin Mo's arms for a while, rolled into Hee-hwan's arms for a while, and then woke up. She looked at her mother and then at her father. It was so happy to be sick. She secretly held her parents' hands with her little paws and felt that she was the happiest baby in the world. When Hee-hwan woke up again, it was already 10 o'clock in the morning. Her eyes were a little sore and dry. She grabbed her phone and looked at it. It was turned off. She turned it on, and then countless calls popped up. Her assistant and some business partners called. She thought that her phone was out of battery, but she saw that there were still 2 bars. It must be Chin Mo who turned it off. Hee-hwan sat on the bed alone and scratched her hair. She picked a few important people and called them. After dealing with them, she threw her phone down and went to find Chin Mo. Chin Mo was accompanying Hee-hwan. Hee-hwan went over and sat on the sofa opposite him. Did you turn off my phone? Chin Mo looked at her and said coldly, do you only care about work? Don't you want to ask if Hee-hwan's fever has gone down? Hee-hwan paused for a moment. He wanted to ask but couldn't bring himself to do so. Chin Mo didn't keep her in suspense as he lightly said, her fever has gone down, but she still needs to take good care of her for the next 2 days. Between the 2 of us, who will stay at home to take care of her? He looked at her expression and whispered, Hee-hwan, don't think about handing her over to the servants or my parents. She's our child. If we don't take care of her, who will? Hee-hwan said reluctantly, I'll take care of her in the afternoon. I have something to deal with tomorrow. Chin Mo glanced at her and didn't say anything, which meant that he agreed. Hee-hwan reached out and touched Hee-hwan's head. It's not hot anymore. Chin Mo pursed his lips. I'll go make dinner. Hee-hwan stopped him. Aren't we going to hire an auntie here? Chin Mo paused for a moment. We'll talk about it later. He Huan said anxiously, we can't just leave it like this without working. You don't have to work. Is there a problem with me taking care of you? He looked at her quietly. He Huan turned her face to the side. You know that's not what I mean. Chin Mo paused. She's going to the nursery soon. If you're not free during this period, I'll bring her to the company. There are always a lot of secretaries in the company who are willing to take care of her. He Huan was being sarcastic by him again. However, she didn't do anything to him and pretended not to understand. Updated tomorrow morning, before 11 a.m. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 41-44. It was boring to talk like that. He Huan turned her face away. She really didn't want to talk to him. Chin Mo looked at her and went to the kitchen without saying anything. Yi Huan sat there with her big eyes blinking. She asked seriously, Mom, did you and Dad quarrel? No. Yi Huan denied it too quickly. Then she felt that her words were a little harsh. She softened her tone and coaxed Yi Huan, Dad and Mom were just discussing problems. Yi Huan looked at her again and asked in a low voice, but Dad seems to be angry. Mom, will you coax Dad like how you coax me? I've seen other mothers coax Dad like that on TV. Yi Huan, I'm a little embarrassed. Yi Huan's little face was full of disappointment. Then she just watched TV and unconsciously hugged the baby bottle. This was the insecure look he had once again. Yi Huan pursed her lips and reached out to stroke her shiny black hair. Are you angry? I'm not angry, said the little girl. I just feel that my family is not happy. Looking at Yi Huan's angry face, Yi Huan couldn't help but laugh. She reached out to grab the little girl's hair. Why are you not happy? Yi Huan looked at the TV and pretended not to care. Because Dad and Mom don't love each other. Yi Huan was stunned. After a while, she asked in a low voice, did you see it on TV again? Yi Huan looked straight ahead and nodded hard. Yi Huan coughed and said in a low voice, actually, TV is also filmed and written by people. But Dad and Mom are real. Yi Huan said a little stubbornly. Yi Huan didn't know what to say for a moment. After a long time, she said in a low voice, then what is called love? You coax Dad. Yi Huan said eagerly. Yi Huan was a little confused. She reached out and touched her head uncomfortably. Coax him. Shouldn't a man coax a woman? But the sick little Yi Huan was very insistent. There are also women coaxing men on TV. Whoever is wrong has to be coaxed. Am I wrong? Yi Huan pointed at herself. Yi Huan's face tightened. It's wrong not to love Daddy. Yi Huan was stunned again. No love, was she that obvious? Even Yi Huan felt that she didn't love Chin Mo. After being stunned for a while, she finally bit her lower lip and said, then I'll go and coax Dad. That means I love him, right? I don't know, but at least I care. Little Yi Huan was finally willing to look her in the eye. Therefore, Yi Huan knew that in Yi Huan's heart, Chin Mo's position as her father was much higher than hers. She grew up in the Chin family, so she was closer to Chin Mo. There was an indescribable feeling in Yi Huan's heart. She pursed her lips and squatted down in front of Yi Huan. I'll go coax Daddy so the baby won't be angry at Mommy anymore. Yi Huan's big eyes were shining with anticipation. Yi Huan stood up and adjusted her clothes, feeling very uncomfortable. Chin Mo was a man, and he still needed her to coax him. She really couldn't coax him. But she had to bite the bullet and do it anyway. After all, Yi Huan was on his side. He Huan went to the kitchen. Qin Mo was processing the ingredients, and the rice was already cooked. He Huan looked at Yi Huan, who was outside. Yi Huan was peeking her head out to look at them. She was so adorable. Well, when did you learn to cook? He Huan leaned on the counter and said some cheesy words of love. End of chapter. Chapter 41-45. Do you have me in your heart? 3. Without raising his head, Qin Mo replied calmly, when I first met you. The knife in his hand paused for a moment. On the day you came of age, I wanted to take care of you in the future, so I went to learn it. Rustic words of love added bonus points. His words were true, he had really gone to learn it for her, causing his hands to be covered in blisters. Even now, there were still some scars on his hands. However, He Huan had never noticed that it was a light shade of white. But then again, they did not live together and she did not look at him when they made love. They did not interact at all, so how would she know? After Qin Mo said that, He Huan was a little embarrassed and only replied after a long while. Qin Mo looked at her. Why are you here instead of accompanying Yi Huan? She said that she wanted me to come over, to see what you made. He Huan felt a little awkward. Qin Mo's gaze was a little deep, causing her to feel uncomfortable. She was angry that he could see through her. After a while, Qin Mo smiled faintly. So, do you know what I made now? He Huan looked at the food in his hands. She did not even know what it was, so how could she say it? Just as she was feeling awkward, Qin Mo told her. He lowered his head and spoke to her warmly. The way he spoke with his head lowered was like a gentle husband. Even though He Huan had so many differences with him, she had to admit that he was good-looking, the type that could be considered a top-tier celebrity. However, no matter how gentle he was, she could not be clearer about the domineering side of him. At the very least, he liked to make her cry in bed. He Huan listened to him absent-mindedly. Later on, when he asked her a question, she could not answer and could only look at him indifferently. Qin Mo's lips curled into a charming smile. He did not say anything and merely reached out to pinch her cheeks. What are you thinking about? He Huan snapped back to reality and patted his hand. You cut the food with your hand. You don't like it? Then, don't you like my place the most? Qin Mo said in a perverted manner. He Huan couldn't take it anymore. Absolutely not. Whenever I touch you, don't you want to die? You clearly like me, yet you pretend like you don't like me. Is it really okay to say one thing but mean another? He muttered in a low voice. His finger gently touched her soft and tender face. Even though she was often exposed to the sun and wind and didn't take good care of her skin, He Huan's skin would recover after a week of rest. This was probably the biggest advantage of her thin body. Although she didn't have any 32D skin, she would ignite a wildfire the moment he touched her. Moreover, she only came back once or twice a year. It was indeed hard for him to endure for the past few years. He Huan took a step back, but there was nowhere for her to go. Her body was pressed against the counter behind her. When he was about to come closer again, she warned him in a low voice, Qin Mo, stop. Yi Huan is at home. He paused and pressed his lips against hers. His voice was husky and pleasant to the ears. I didn't finish last night, so I'll make up for it tonight. I'll probably be busy until 9 o'clock. You can coax her to sleep. He Huan's face was very red. I don't know how to coax her. Qin Mo chuckled softly. You can even coax me. Why can't you coax Yi Huan? Yi Huan was even more embarrassed. She gritted her snow-white teeth. Qin Mo, I'm not coaxing you. He chuckled and retreated to continue processing the ingredients. Then why did you come over so clingy and say such lovey-dovey words? For your own happiness. Huan wanted to leave. He hooked an arm around her waist from behind and said in a low voice, "Don't forget what I said just now. Coax her to sleep. Otherwise, end of this chapter." Chapter 41-46. Huan didn't dare to ask him what he was going to say. She just twisted his arm and tried to get him away. Qin Mo looked down at her. He knew that she was more shy than angry this time. After all, she was the one who teased him. He kissed her forehead and said in a low voice, "Don't forget." Huan ran away. He smiled and looked at her tenderly. Huan went back to the living room. Huan looked at her. "Did you coax Daddy?" Huan sat down and coughed. "Don't be surprised if Daddy gets angry in the future. Daddy is old now and he's going through menopause." "What do you mean by menopause?" Huan's eyes widened. Huan drank a mouthful of water. "His temper is volatile, so it's definitely not normal. Daddy is so miserable." Huan said bitterly. "Mommy has to coax Daddy more often." She paused. "Then Daddy needs an injection." Her little face was very animated. "I'm very happy when I see Daddy giving Mommy an injection. Mommy, just bear with the pain a little." Huan's face froze. Then, she stopped talking. She turned her face away and bit her fist. She told herself that it was her biological child. She couldn't help it anymore. "Your daddy is not an injection." "If it's not an injection, then what is it?" "I saw the needle clearly." Huan insisted. Huan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She thought it was funny. If Qin Mo knew that Huan said that he was a needle, she wondered how he would feel. The topic passed. Huan was tired. She moved over to her mother's lap and wanted to sleep. Actually, she could sleep in her own little bed, but she wanted her mother to dote on her. Mommy didn't coax the baby after coaxing Daddy. It had to be said that it was better for Huan to have fun outside. It was not easy to be a good mother and wife. She lowered her head and stroked Huan's hair. There was motherly gentleness in her eyes. She thought that Huan was really cute. She didn't want to let her go. She couldn't bear to let Huan become a child with a single parent. She couldn't bear to let her not have a single parent. She was so adorable now. Even if she took her away, there were some things that Qin Mo had given her, she would never be able to give them back. As Huan thought of this, he lowered his head and kissed Huan. The corners of his mouth curled up into a warm smile. Qin Mo came over and caught her expression. He leaned against the door and looked at her attentively for a while before lowering his voice. "Time to eat." "Ha." Huan looked up. But Huan just fell asleep. "I'll take her to my room. She just ate not long ago. When she wakes up, heat up the baby's meal for her. I'll make it myself." As Qin Mo spoke, he reached out and gently picked up the baby. She did it. Heat. To say. He's going to say about going to tutu. Her face was a little hot, knowing that he was doing it on purpose. When Qin Mo came out again, he saw Huan sitting there in a daze. He reached out and pulled her up. "Eat with me." She bit her lip and followed him to sit down. This was the first time she had eaten Qin Mo's cooking. It was surprisingly delicious. It seemed that he was telling the truth when he said that he specially went to learn. Huan looked up while eating. "I can be a chef now." Qin Mo smiled. "Really? But, not everyone has the good fortune to eat my food." He Huan was stunned for a moment. She felt that his words were a little vulgar, but she didn't want to think in that direction. Chapter 41-47. Do you have me in your heart? 5. He Huan couldn't bear to listen to his words. She didn't want to hear them either. So she lowered her head and ate. Chin Mo looked at her evasive look and felt that it was a little cute. He reached out and pinched her face. Can't you just eat? He Huan slapped his hand away. Aren't you going to the company for a meeting? Now that Yi Huan wasn't here, Chin Mo's words were obviously much louder. He paused and said, "There's no rush. We can make it if we do it once. I'm the boss and no one dares to say anything if I'm late." He Huan put down her chopsticks and couldn't help but complain. Can you have some integrity? Integrity is needed between a husband and wife. I think we should leave out one word. Leaving the word fuck would be commendable. Chin Mo got up to get his jacket and walked back. I'm going to the meeting. I'll have an exam tonight. He Huan thought, we haven't spent much time together in years. Why is he so perverted? Chin Mo was in a good mood. He took the car keys and left. As he drove, he couldn't help but smile. When he went to the company for a meeting, the employees and shareholders all felt that Boss Chin was in a special mood today. His eyes were full of lust. He Huan cleaned up and put the dishes in the dishwasher. But she didn't know how to use it. She couldn't get it to work for a long time. Finally, she called Chin Mo. Chin Mo was in a meeting. When his phone rang, he glanced at it and was surprised to see that He Huan was calling him. In the past year, she couldn't make more than 2 or 3 calls. Every time she did, she would ask how Yi Huan was doing. He had only left for a short while before she called. He thought that Yi Huan had a fever again, so he picked up in front of so many people. What's wrong? Her voice was gentle. Everyone knew that it was He Huan, President Chin's wife. Rumor had it that they didn't have a good relationship. But from the looks of it, it was obvious that they were close. He Huan said, I don't know how to use the dishwasher. Chin Mo was relieved. You can wait for me to come back tonight. I'm afraid the bowl will be ruined, she said unreasonably. Chin Mo had a good temper. He told her everything in detail and hung up the phone. After sitting down and chatting for a while, her phone rang again. He Huan said that she couldn't get it. Chin Mo held the phone in one hand and motioned for his subordinate to continue speaking while he walked to the window. You're deliberately torturing me, aren't you? Why, do you want me to accompany you? He Huan grunted, are you coming back or not? Chin Mo looked at the conference table. I can't come back, but I can satisfy all your requests tonight. She thought that he didn't know that she was deliberately being unreasonable to annoy him. She thought that it would be better for them to live separately. He was a little disappointed, and the joy he had earlier was gone. His expression also became indifferent. How about this, I'll get someone from the engineering department to teach you later. Obviously, it was a waste of talent. President Chin and Mrs. Chin only did this because they were angry. He Huan said no, but he had already made up his mind. Now, the atmosphere was a little stiff. He Huan emphasized again, no, I'll wait for you to come back tonight. I might not come back tonight. Chin Mo's voice became cold. I might have to entertain people. He wouldn't indulge her even if she did. He Huan paused for a moment. But Yi Huan is sick. You have to come back. Really? Did you come back when she was sick? President Chin's voice became louder. He didn't notice that the meeting had stopped. No one was talking. And He Huan became the scene of a big quarrel. End of this chapter. Chapter 41-48. The conference room was silent. Chin Mo noticed it and paused. Then he said in a raspy voice, "Continue the meeting." He said a few words to He Huan and sat down. He told the secretary to send someone from the engineering department to his house to teach Mrs. Chin how to use the dishwasher. The secretary was also fucking crazy. Didn't President Chin have an hourly helper? She was the one who contacted him. She thought of He Huan again. Director, he was an international director. President Chin only had someone wash the dishes for him at home. Wasn't he so precious before? Now that his wife was back, he couldn't wait to spend 24 hours in bed with her. Indeed, men were big scrumptious scenes. The secretary had no choice but to go and get it done. Chin Mo continued to host the meeting, but he was obviously much stricter. The middle and upper management of King Entertainment were all fucked up. When the people from the engineering department came back, the secretary said softly, "Director, he didn't plug it in." Chin Mo nodded. He was amused. He frowned. "You think it's funny?" "I don't usually laugh unless I can't help it." The secretary only dared to crack a joke when she saw that he was in a better mood. Chin Mo glanced at her and didn't say anything. After the meeting was over and everyone had left, he casually asked, "Did she wash the dishes?" The secretary paused. Not only did Director He wash the dishes, but he also took out all the dishes in the cupboard and washed them. Chin Mo frowned. He looked angry, but the little bit of anger in his heart seemed to have been completely dispersed. He looked at his watch. It was only 6:00. The secretary noticed his movement and asked softly, "President Chin, do you want something to eat? I'll work overtime for a while. Help me order a simple meal." Chin Mo said to himself that he wouldn't go home. It would be embarrassing if he went home now. Moreover, she was always out, so it was natural for her to take care of He Huan. Chin Mo walked back to his office and collapsed on the sofa without doing anything. His jacket was thrown aside and his tie was undone. Half an hour later, his secretary brought a simple meal over. He smoked 2 cigarettes and ate a few mouthfuls. He really had no appetite. At this moment, he thought of He Huan and He Huan staying at home. Since He Huan didn't know how to do housework, would she know how to heat up the food? After thinking about it for a while, he actually felt extremely uncomfortable. He thought that he actually cared too much about her, but He Huan still had to eat. Therefore, after some thought, he dialed He Huan's number. The phone rang a few times before it was picked up. Chin Mo heard He Huan's affectionate voice, "Dad." Chin Mo's heart warmed and softened. "Have you eaten?" He Huan paused for a moment, and Chin Mo knew that she was still hungry, so he asked, "Where's Mama?" "Mama is cooking, but she can't even eat the food she cooks, so she's ordering takeout now," He Huan said honestly. Then she said, "Daddy, I miss you so much." Chin Mo said gently, "Then Daddy will come back and cook for you, okay?" He Huan clapped her little hands. "Daddy, come back quickly." Chin Mo grunted and hung up the phone. Then, he took his jacket and walked outside. Secretary Qian was a little surprised. "President Chin, you're going back now?" He nodded. He Huan is at home, so no one cooks. As he said this, he paused. "How about this, ask that part-time worker to come back to work from the day after tomorrow. You can set the time, as long as it doesn't affect her daily life." Chapter 41-49. Secretary Qian smiled and said, "Okay, President Chin." She sighed and said, "Director, he is spoiled, so it's normal that she doesn't know how to do housework." Her comforting words reminded Chin Mo of Uncle He and Auntie Sue. He and He Huan were actually childhood sweethearts, so they had a friendship from the previous generation. Even if they quarreled, they could not make it too ugly. Otherwise, it would embarrass his parents. He walked into the phone. Secretary Qian said goodbye outside the elevator, but Chin Mo's mind had already flown away. He got into the car, started the car with one hand, and lit a cigarette with the other. He was indeed a little tired after a day and night. However, he stopped after 2 cigarettes and listened to music all the way home. It was already 8 o'clock. The apartment was quiet. He walked in and saw He Huan and Yi Huan lying on the sofa, especially Yi Huan. Her legs were straight and she looked very cute. Chin Mo smiled and closed the door. Then, he saw the takeout on the table. It was almost untouched. He thought about it and realized that Yi Huan had been living a luxurious life since she was a child. How could she get used to takeout? He sat next to Yi Huan and asked, "Are you hungry?" Little Yi Huan climbed up with a grunt, "Hungry." She said again, "Daddy, I'm so hungry." Chin Mo reached out to touch her little head and felt that she was no longer having a fever. He asked, "Did you take your medicine in the afternoon?" "Yes, but it's very bitter," Yi Huan complained and looked at He Huan secretly, afraid that she would be angry. He Huan sat up and scratched her hair. "Didn't you say you weren't coming back?" Chin Mo said impatiently, "If I don't come back, Yi Huan will always be hungry." He Huan didn't say anything. "You don't even have an auntie here." "I don't know how to cook." "Not knowing how to cook seems to have become your strength, isn't it?" He pulled her hair and got up. "I'll do it, but it's easier. I'm a little tired." He walked toward the kitchen and suddenly stopped. "Auntie will be coming over the day after tomorrow, so Yi Huan will still be staying with us. You can stay at home to take care of her when you're free. I'll be off on Saturday and Sunday." He Huan did not say anything. He went to the kitchen to prepare some food. He made a bowl of paella for He Huan and a bowl of chicken noodle soup for Yi Huan. There were round shiitake mushrooms, green vegetables, and shredded chicken, which he drizzled with sesame oil. It was very fragrant. Chin Mo placed the tray on the dining table and looked over. Time to eat. The adult and the child had long since starved to death. They came one after the other. They didn't talk much, they just ate. Chin Mo sat at the side and watched quietly. He first looked at Yi Huan, then at He Huan. He Huan ate with relish. She was actually very small, only 160 centimeters, and very thin. Chin Mo knew that she could eat a lot, but because she was always out, she was still very thin. He Huan was 160 centimeters. She probably only weighed about 90 kilograms, and he could carry her with one hand. He looked at her silently, then reached out and gently touched her cheek. He Huan froze and looked up at him. Chin Mo suddenly came back to his senses and smiled faintly. "I can't touch you." She did not speak. He said again, "You're my wife. You talk about this all day long. You think it's interesting when your straight man cancer is acting up." He Huan snorted coldly. Then she continued eating. She was very happy when she ate. Chapter 4150. Fragrant 3. Little Yi Huan looked at her parents from the side, then buried her head in the baby's fragrant noodles. That night, although Chin Mo was very tired, he still helped Yi Huan take a bath. Yi Huan watched. The pink bathtub was extremely fragrant. Our Chin Yi Huan was lying naked inside, her body covered with white bubbles, just like a mosaic. Chin Mo helped her wash her arms, legs and belly. Yi Huan sighed with satisfaction. It was so comfortable. Papa was so comfortable. Yi Huan learned from the experience. After the bath, Qin Mo dragged the little girl out, wrapped her in a big bath towel, and carried her back to the children's room. He took her pajamas and helped her put them on. The little girl was so fragrant and soft that she hugged and kissed her father. That image was bubbling with pink. Even Yi Huan had to admit that there was a reason why a daughter was a father's previous life. Qin Mo also kissed the little girl. Take the medicine and sleep well. Yi Huan obediently drank the medicine and water that he brought over, then covered herself with the quilt and fell asleep contentedly. Yi Huan watched and felt that Yi Huan was very happy. When leaving the little girl's bedroom, she couldn't help saying, "She looks very happy." Qin Mo, you took good care of her. Qin Mo glanced at her and then said indifferently, I can take good care of you too. Yi Huan felt that she couldn't continue the conversation with him. Why did it have to be about her again? They went back to the bedroom together. Qin Mo directly leaned on the sofa, looking a little tired. Yi Huan looked at him and didn't dare to provoke him. She said softly, I'm going to take a bath first. You should also go to bed early. He didn't look at her, but just replied indifferently. Yi Huan thought that he was probably angry with her in his heart. It was good to be angry, lest he asked her to do something. Yi Huan took her bathrobe into the bathroom and turned on the hot water to wash herself. Her mind was filled with the work she had to do the next day, the contract with Kong Qiao, and so on. Her mind was a mess and a little hot. Qin Mo appeared without a sound and hooked his arm around her waist from behind. In just a second, she was pressed against the wall. Then, her lips were kissed, and she didn't even have time to resist. Yi Huan bit her lip. Qin Mo, what are you doing? Let me go. He didn't let go. Not only did he not let go, but he also kissed her even deeper. He bit her lips indulgently and dotingly, and his voice became even more hoarse. We didn't finish last night. Let's continue now, N. Yi Huan felt as if all the air in her lungs had been squeezed out, and it was difficult for her to breathe. She bit her lip and turned her face away. Not here. This sentence was said with some shame and indignation. When it came to this kind of thing, Qin Mo had always been domineering. He could do whatever he wanted. But now, looking at her twisted face with a look of humiliation, he was both angry and amused. He also felt an inexplicable sense of heartache. His voice was low and hoarse. Are you uncomfortable here? You're so small that I can hold you with one hand. His voice was really hoarse and sexy, and any woman would fall for it. He held Yi Huan with one hand and kissed her. He was wearing clothes, but soon his back was wet from the shower, and the front of his body was also wet from sticking to her. He was obviously very tired, but as soon as he touched her, he seemed to be alive again. He didn't need to rest, and he didn't need to sleep. He only needed her. The kiss was messy. Yi Huan refused at the beginning, but she slowly hugged his waist and rested her head on his shoulder. Her breath was messy. Qin Mo, end of this chapter. Chapter 41-51. He went to the bathroom twice and returned to the bedroom 3 times. It was almost 2 in the morning. Yi Huan lay on her stomach. Qin Mo, I want to sleep. The man put down his hand that was about to touch her shoulder again. He turned over and lay down beside her. After a while, he pulled the quilt over them and said, Sleep. She was so tired that she didn't move. Qin Mo looked at her and then gently turned her over and pulled her into his arms. He was a little crazy tonight. Yi Huan leaned on his shoulder and buried her face. She complained, You've done it. I don't have the energy to accompany you anymore. If you really want one, you can raise one outside. As soon as she said that, he grabbed her chin violently and pressed her under his body. Juan was scared out of her wits. She glared at him and said, "What are you doing, Chinamo? Can't you let me sleep?" "Say that again." He pinched her chin and asked. His expression didn't look good, especially for a man who had just had sex. He was really angry. Juan closed her eyes and pretended not to understand. "What are you talking about?" He gritted his teeth and said, "Apologize to me, or you won't be able to get out of bed tomorrow. Aren't you going to talk to Kong Chiao about the new drama tomorrow? If you don't want it to fail, apologize to me now." Juan was speechless. "Can you not be so petty? I was just saying." He kissed her as soon as she said that. It was a kind of passionate kiss. He kissed and bit her, which hurt her so much. No matter how Juan tried to dodge, she couldn't. Even her bathrobe was torn and tattered. She couldn't pull him up even if she wanted to, because Chinamo pressed her hands down and pressed her down on the bed. "Chinamo! Can you not be so excited all day long?" She shouted angrily, and her hair was messy. "Excited?" He lowered his waist. "That's a good word." Juan turned her face away. "Can you not be so obscene? You say that I'm your wife, but I'm actually a tool for you to give yourself away." Chinamo was still pinching her face. His voice was hoarse and somewhat dangerous. "A tool for leaking jade." "Juan, I'm afraid you don't understand what a tool for leaking jade is." She didn't want to talk to him and turned her face to the side. He reached out to grab her chin and forced her to look at him. He leaned over and bit down hard on her neck. His voice was even more hoarse. "I really want to show you what it means to be a jade-leaking tool." Being bitten by him, she let out a heavy sigh. "Show me, Chinamo, you bastard." "Yes, I'm a bastard." He bit her neck again. Juan, which one of us is more of a bastard?" He didn't stop biting. After one bite, he said, "I told you not to come back." He took another bite. "I'll let you like someone else." She took another bite. "Who told you to ask me to find another woman? Heartless. I'll bite you to death." Juan screamed and then stopped moving. He whispered into her ear, "But I still can't bear to let you see it. It's obvious that you can't. Don't find excuses." Juan was so angry that she said that fearlessly. Chinamo was angry, but he was angry and amused at the same time. He pressed her down and coughed. "I can't." Soon, Juan could feel that he couldn't. She glared at him. "Go find someone else." She kicked him hard. Chinamo was even angrier. He pressed her foot. "Juan, do you really think that I don't dare to punish you?" Chapter 41-52. She stared at him stubbornly. She looked fierce and cute. It was just like when she was a child. She was bullied, but she still pretended to be fierce. She looked a little amused and annoyed at the same time. Mo's heart softened a little. In fact, she was still that cute little girl, Juan, who followed him around. Mo reached out to stroke her hair. "Okay, it's time to sleep. Don't you have work tomorrow?" He gave in first, so Juan couldn't be fierce. Moreover, she would be the one to suffer in the end if she went against him. Juan couldn't help but say after a while, "I'm going to take a shower." Mo chuckled, a little smug. Juan sat up and turned around. "Do you use that tonight?" Mo put one hand behind his head and said indifferently, "Can't you feel it?" He Huan gave him a kick, and he said lazily, "Is it that important whether or not it's true? Besides, isn't it good for us to have another child?" He Huan paused and said softly, "I don't want a child for the time being." Chi Nemo got up and hooked her body. "You don't want one, or for the time being. We all have work. It's hard enough to take care of Yi Huan." She emphasized, "We have to take good care of the child after it's born. Otherwise, what's the point of giving birth?" He thought about it. He Huan thought that he would get angry. After all, he was usually so moody, especially in bed. But Chi Nemo didn't. He was still a little stunned. "I really think so." He suddenly buried his face in her neck and said hoarsely, "He Huan, let's start from the beginning, okay?" He Huan didn't move. She turned her face. "Have you used it?" He paused and sighed. "Are our conversations never going to be on the same point?" He Huan pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Chi Mo's tone was also indifferent. "Yes." He let go of her. He Huan had to take a shower, so he didn't follow her. When she returned to the room after the shower, Chi Mo wasn't there. It was better that he wasn't there. He didn't have to bother her. He Huan lay down and fell asleep. In the middle of the night, she woke up inexplicably. Her hand was unsteady, but there was still no one beside her. She opened her eyes and looked at the pillow. She was surprised that he hadn't returned yet. Usually, when he was angry, he would just smoke a few cigarettes and come back. If he was still angry, he would press her down and torture her a few more times. What was wrong with him today? She wanted to go back to sleep, but after closing her eyes for a while, she couldn't help but choose to get up. Not in the study. No one in the living room. Finally, she saw Chi Mo in the children's room. He was sleeping with Yi Huan. His tall body was on the 1.5-meter bed. It looked a little cramped, but Yi Huan looked especially obedient. She was nestled in his arms, her little face resting on his neck. That scene was very loving. He Huan watched for a while and decided not to disturb them. She retreated and returned to her room. Originally, he thought that sleeping alone would be very peaceful, but after lying down for a long time, he still didn't feel sleepy. It wasn't until around 4 or 5 o'clock that he felt sleepy. When he woke up, it was almost 10 o'clock. He Huan sat up straight and scratched his hair. Hearing Chi Mo's voice outside, she called out, "Why didn't Chi Mo wake me up?" He appeared at the door of the master bedroom. "I thought you could take care of yourself." It was the familiar squeeze. He Huan looked at him and didn't say anything. She first called Kong Chiao and changed the time for the talk. Chapter 4153. To apologize, she treated Conchao to a meal. She hung up the phone and looked at Chi Mo, who hadn't left yet. "I remember that Conchao is still an artist under King Entertainment. Shouldn't he talk to the company directly? That way, I can punish him." Chi Mo said calmly. He Huan didn't care. His contract is about to expire. Punish him. I think it would be a good choice for him to start his own company or work for Stars Entertainment. Or he could work with me. Chi Mo smiled. You are speaking for him. He walked over and put his hands on both sides of her body, trapping her between him and the bed. Isn't Conchao good looking? Do you like him? Psycho. He Huan pushed him angrily. If Chi Mo didn't move, she wouldn't be able to. Although he spent most of his time in the office, his body was very strong and his strength was much greater than hers. She didn't know where he got his muscles from. Chi Mo pressed against her, his voice even lower and huskier. Do you think that he's good-looking, just like the person in your heart? He Huan was a little angry. What's wrong with you? Kong Xiao is a few years older than him. Because you don't dare to mention him or even see him. Tell me, every time you see Rong Yu from Qin Chen's family, do you feel melancholy? Do you still think of the person with the same name? Qin Mo asked. He Huan stared at him. Her head hung in the air. It was actually very uncomfortable, but she just stared at him like that. After a long time, He Huan's head fell heavily on the bed sheet. If that's the case with Qin Mo, we have nothing to talk about. If you insist on quarreling with me. His eyes were slightly red. Have you said what's on your mind? He Huan turned her face and bit her fist. Do you have to do this? Qin Mo doesn't want a divorce. He wants a peaceful life and wants to give Yi Huan a complete family. I've cooperated with him. Why isn't he satisfied? Cancel the play and I'll leave him alone. Give me your word that you won't see him, he said calmly and cruelly. He Huan's Adam's apple bobbed. I did it because the script is good. The script was carefully selected. I didn't know it was him. Can you be reasonable? I'm reasonable. He's also reasonable. He said calmly, I'll spend 10 times the money to buy the script, and I'll find the most famous person to help me write the script. I'll write until you're satisfied, okay? He Huan closed his eyes. Qin Mo hasn't given up yet, has he? I've said it before, a good script depends on your feelings. She paused for a moment before continuing, business is personal. I don't want to mix things up with Qin Mo. Do you understand? He stared at her and slowly rose to his feet, saying nothing more. He Huan's eyes were still closed. After a while, she opened her eyes. She was alone in the bedroom. She got up, scratched her hair, and went to the bathroom to take a shower. Qin Mo, on the other hand, was smoking in his study. He was thinking about what he had just said. Her perseverance and magnanimity all pointed to one thing. She didn't love him. Actually, he had known it for a long time. But every time he thought about it, he still felt a little uncomfortable. Beside him, a little person tugged at his sleeve. Qin Mo looked down and saw that it was Yi Huan. He smiled faintly. What's wrong, little one? Yi Huan asked softly, Daddy, did you quarrel with Mommy? Chapter 41-54. Qin Mo patted her little head and said, No, Daddy and Mommy are not quarreling. Yi Huan asked again, if Mommy is angry, will you coax her? Qin Mo frowned and answered after a while, I think so. Because Mommy is a girl. Isn't it because Daddy loves Mommy? Yi Huan asked mischievously. Qin Mo smiled again and said, Little girl, you already know love at such a young age. Yi Huan stretched out her little hands and wanted to hug him. Qin Mo reached out and hugged his little daughter. He put his face close to her and murmured, Yi Huan is right. Daddy loves Mommy, so he coaxes her. On the other side, Yi Huan had already changed into a set of casual clothes. She wasn't very particular about her clothes, and Qin Mo didn't seem to have any requirements. Besides, she was seeing another man now, so he wouldn't have any objections. Yi Huan kissed Yi Huan and said, Mommy is going out to talk about work. Be good, baby. Yi Huan nodded obediently and said, I know. Mommy is a famous director. Who told you that? Yi Huan pinched her little face, but it was just a gentle pinch. Yi Huan giggled and said, Daddy told me. Yi Huan looked up at Qin Mo and said uncomfortably, You're talking to her about this. His eyes were a little deep. Can't you tell me this? No, that's not what I mean. He Huan was very weak. After a while, she whispered again, can we not quarrel? Chi Nemo actually said yes. Yi Huan clapped her little hands and said, in this case, Daddy doesn't need to coax Mommy. Yi Huan felt helpless and bitter. No matter how unwilling she was, it was because of Yi Huan that she maintained this marriage and was willing to stay in the country. When she was about to leave, Chi Nemo stopped her and handed her a thermos cup. Tremella soup. Drink some in the car. It's at least an hour before dinner, and you have to drive. Yi Huan looked down at the pink cup. She pursed her lips and didn't say anything in the end. She waved her hand. I'm leaving. Chi Nemo walked to the door. Let's have dinner tonight. I'll cook. Yi Huan pressed the elevator button and pondered for a moment. Okay, I'll come back early. His gaze deepened, but he didn't say anything else. Just then, the elevator arrived, and Yi Huan went in. When the elevator doors closed, their eyes met. She didn't understand the meaning behind his gaze. When it was completely closed, she heaved a sigh of relief. Actually, when she was with Chi Nemo, she felt that it was hard. It was the feeling that she had to be careful even when she breathed. She didn't understand why he wouldn't let go. He clearly wasn't that pure. When they were young, she knew that Chi Nemo treated her well and liked her. When they got married, her heart was dead, and she treated him as her last piece of driftwood. At that time, he was wild with joy. When he found out that she had someone else in her heart, he was extremely mad. Later, some unbearable things happened, and that period of time was very dark for Yi Huan. Now that they lived together, they might often quarrel. She really didn't know how to get along with him. He would be very gentle one second, and the next second, he would turn hostile and mention Romeo. This was a joke that they couldn't get over. Sometimes, she didn't know why he didn't just be straightforward. Why couldn't he turn a blind eye to it like she did? Yi Huan didn't understand, and he had never explained it to her. When she got out of the elevator, she let out a deep breath. So she still liked to work. Jiutian Shenhuang. Chapter 4155. She doesn't love him. As Yi Huan was driving, she seemed to have thought of something and turned off the engine. She picked up the pink cup and looked at it. Then, she smiled lightly. When she opened it, a fragrant lotus seed scent wafted into her nose. Yi Huan took a bite and found that it tasted good and delicious. She drank half the glass and closed the lid before starting the car. Half an hour later, the car stopped in front of a high-class restaurant. They bumped into Kong Qiao on their way in. Yi Huan nodded. What a coincidence. Come in. Kong Qiao smiled and gestured for her to go first. The two of them ordered their meals while discussing their cooperation. Kong Qiao had been very confident, but his attitude today was a little ambiguous. Director He, do you want to reconsider the show? Yi Huan looked at him. Kong Qiao, why do you think that? Kong Qiao smiled lightly. The company helped me take on a variety show and the pay is very tempting. Kong Qiao, I know you're not the type to fuss over things like that. You're already past the stage of being a playboy. What you need now is a masterpiece, Yi Huan said matter-of-factly. Kong Qiao smiled. You're right, it's for my own good. But Director He, I still have King Entertainment and some things are out of my control. I heard it was arranged by President Qin himself. You should know why he made such an arrangement. Yi Huan was stunned. Then she was furious. How could Qin Nemo do that? He knew that she and Kong Qiao were here to discuss Twin. What did he do behind the scenes to stop Kong Qiao from taking on the show and even let her out? He was too shameless. Huan was silent for a moment. When did this happen? Kong Qiao gently swirled the aperitif. We talked about it in the meeting yesterday. I didn't call you because I wanted to explain it to you in person. Director He, you know the situation in this country. Regardless of whether I'm an artist or a former investor, it's not good for me to offend CEO Qin. Furthermore, I'm indebted to CEO Qin, so I can't just ignore him. I'm sorry, I'll drink 3 glasses to accompany you. Huan felt numb. At this moment, she felt that even the tremella soup she ate was bitter. It was the poison that Qin Mo fed her. But she couldn't make things difficult for Kong Qiao, so she smiled bitterly. I understand. Kong Qiao comforted him softly. With director He's fame, of course there would be a lot of people willing to act in other movies. But for this movie, I advise director He to consider President Qin's bottom line. Career is important, but family harmony is the most important. I said something that I shouldn't have, and I'm sorry that director He thinks highly of me. Huan narrowed his eyes, took a sip of his aperitif, and laughed at himself. I'm not a famous director. I might be useful overseas, but I've only realized that I'm nothing without the capital here. She propped her head up with her hand. Kong Qiao, I understand your friendship today. Let's work together again in the future. Kong Qiao smiled faintly. He wanted to say something, but decided against it. It wasn't good for him to meddle too much in the affairs between husband and wife. Everyone had their own thoughts during the meal. Because of the wine, Kong Qiao had called a designated driver for Huan. The chauffeur was a nice guy. After getting in the car, he said politely, Sis, this car is really nice. It must be worth a few million, right? Huan sat in the back seat and grunted, Maybe, I didn't buy it. Look at your temperament, it must be Sir who bought it. The chauffeur praised. Huan wasn't drunk, but she felt suffocated and uncomfortable. End of this chapter. Chapter 41-56. She looked out of the window and didn't know how long the car had been driving. Suddenly, she saw a long queue by the roadside. She murmured, What's going on over there? It seems that a writer is signing a book. I saw it when I came. The young writer seemed to have been in a vegetative state. It's a miracle that he woke up. The young man said to himself. Huan was stunned for a moment, and then she realized that the person should be Rongyu. Rongyu. She chewed the name in her heart. It seemed very far away, but also very close. She could remember the way he leaned against the tree and read quietly, but it was a little blurry after a long time. The car drove for about 200 meters. She suddenly called the driver, Find a place to park the car. I want to take a walk. The driver was stunned, but he still found a place to park the car. Huan paid the driver and waited for him to get out of the car. She sat in the car for a long time before she got out. She slowly walked on the street, and Rongyu was on the other side. She thought that they hadn't seen each other for many years. It had been many years. Huan let out a long sigh. She actually felt a little shy when she was approaching home. She and Rongyu. Rongyu knew that she liked him very much, but before she could confess, Rongyu was hit by a car and became a vegetative state. She frantically begged Qin Mo to let Qin Chen save Rongyu. When he said marriage, she nodded without shaking her head. Qin Mo didn't know about Rongyu's existence before. She hid it very well. When Qin Mo saw Rongyu in the hospital, he understood why she agreed to get married. They looked very similar. Qin Mo was more masculine, while Rongyu had the kind of gentle and reserved temperament of a scholar. On the night of their wedding, Chin Mo pinched her chin and asked if she was thinking of Rongyu when she looked at him. If she was thinking of doing it with Rongyu, he wouldn't allow her to close her eyes. Once she did, he would torture her. It was clearly their wedding night, but he made it look like a crime scene. Hee-hwan couldn't let go of that night. She knew that Chin Mo was angry because he always thought that they would grow up together and one day they would get married. Just like how she was in his heart, the person in her heart was Chin Mo. But he found that it wasn't. But in his anger, he still married her. Then came the torture, the minuscule torture. Hee-hwan was lost in thought and unknowingly walked to that area. She came back to her senses and found that she was at the back of the line, and there were only a few people in front of Rongyu. If he left now, it would seem like he was doing it on purpose. Hee-hwan didn't move and continued to line up. When she arrived, the beautiful voice that she hadn't heard for a long time spoke softly, "Where is your book?" Books? Only then did Hee-hwan remember that this was a signing event. It would be embarrassing for him to be empty-handed, so he said in a low voice, "I'll buy one now." The moment she opened her mouth, the man who had his head lowered suddenly looked up. He stared at her for a long time before softly saying, "Hee-hwan." Hee-hwan smiled faintly. "It's me." Rongyu's beautiful eyes stared at her for a long time before he said in a husky voice, "You're here?" She grunted and sat on the seat opposite him. Ronyu's eyes were still fixed on her face, but he took a book from the side and quickly signed it. Hee-hwan just looked at him. After he signed, he put the book in her hand. "Wait for me for a while, okay?" "I still have a while. It will be over in about half an hour." Hee-hwan nodded. Chapter 4157. Rongyu whispered a few words to the staff beside him, and the staff invited Hee-hwan inside to take a seat. He then brought a cup of green tea over, saying that it was from Rongyu's private collection. Hee-hwan gently touched the cup and looked at the tea. It was very appetizing. Hee-hwan took a sip. It tasted good. Since she had nothing to do, she opened the book he gave her. It was Rongyu's new book. Hee-hwan read it quietly. A long time had passed unknowingly. Rongyu came over and sat beside her. He smiled and asked, "What are you looking at?" Hee-hwan was stunned for a moment before she smiled. "Your book. It's quite nice." Rongyu closed the book for her. "The tea is cold. Let me treat you to a cup of coffee." Hee-hwan stood up involuntarily and smiled warmly at Rongyu. "We haven't seen each other for a long time. Don't tell me you don't even have time for a cup of coffee." "Of course." Hee-hwan also smiled. She took her things and walked out with him. "Where are we going?" "Let me treat you to a meal to celebrate your discharge." Rongyu suddenly said, "Hee-hwan, I've been out of the hospital for 2 years." Hee-hwan was stunned again. She then whispered, "Are you blaming me for not visiting you?" "No." Rongyu sighed, and then his tone became lighter. "Let's not talk about this. Everything is fine now." Hee-hwan carried her bag. "Sure." Finally, they chose a quiet coffee shop and sat facing each other. Hee-hwan lowered her head and stirred her coffee. She whispered, "Are you writing a book now?" Rongyu took a sip of his coffee and smiled. "I also take on some scripts. I heard that Twin had just been adapted into a drama, and it was bought by a famous director." "Hee-hwan, I only found out later that it was you." Hee-hwan was taken aback. "Is this coffee for me because I bought your script?" Rongyu shook his head. "Just because we're old friends." Hee-hwan smiled faintly. "Rongyu, you haven't changed at all after so many years." You didn't either. He-Huan, you're still the same as before. Rong-Yu's gaze was calm. Also, it's nice to meet you today. He-Huan looked at him. There was a slight bitterness in his heart, an indescribable feeling. She knew that Rong-Yu didn't want her to explain. There was no need to say those words that she couldn't say in time. They're all fine now. Moreover, He-Huan was not a pretentious person. He-Huan lowered his head. I'm relieved that you're doing well. Work will be smooth sailing from now on. When she left, Rong-Yu didn't ask her to stay. He sat there quietly, tasting the remaining cold coffee. It was as if he was tasting a bitter love that he didn't have time to express. Separated by a layer of glass, he could see He-Huan's back as she left. When Rong-Yu found out that she was married, he went to look for her not long after he woke up. At that time, she was overseas and not in the country. He saw Qin Mo and a cute little girl who was He-Huan's child. At that time, he knew that it was impossible for him and He-Huan. He wrote, and then she bought twins. He knew she could see the shadow of their youth in the book. Now, they were only in their 30s, but they seemed to be in their twilight years. As He-Huan walked further and further away, Rong-Yu quietly watched her back. Then, he lowered his head. She put the book here and forgot to take it with her. There must be something in her heart that she couldn't let go of. Was it Qin Mo? He smiled faintly. He knew that He-Huan had liked him, but that kind of love was close to pure love. The one who had always been with him was real. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 4158. He-Huan walked out and walked for a while before returning to her car. She was drunk, so she couldn't drive. She didn't want to go anywhere, so she leaned against the back of the seat. In her mind, apart from the encounter with Rong-Yu, Kong Qiao's words were also on her mind. She didn't want to go home and face Qin Mo because they would definitely quarrel. He-Huan covered her face with her hand and chuckled after a while. Why did she think that Qin Mo would be so easy to talk to? He was obviously overbearing and had always been like that. She sat in the car for about 2 hours, and it was already past 4 o'clock before she was energetic enough to drive back. She opened the door and unexpectedly, Qin Mo wasn't home. The house was quiet. He-Huan threw her bag on the sofa and sat on it. She thought for a while and called Qin Mo. Her voice was a little hoarse. Where's He-Huan? She's with me. Qin Mo's tone was indifferent. Something came up at the company, so I brought her here. He-Huan was silent. Qin Mo smiled. Are you coming to pick her up? No need. He-Huan rubbed her forehead and her voice was a little hoarse. Bring her back when you come back. Qin Mo pondered. I'll be done in a while. When I come back, I'll take He-Huan out for dinner. She's been talking about going out with her parents for a long time. He-Huan closed her eyes. Qin Mo, I'm not in the mood today. There was a moment of silence on the other side. Then, he said in a hoarse voice, is it because you met Rong-Yu that you're not in the mood? You followed me. He-Huan held her breath and couldn't believe it. Qin Mo didn't deny it. Then, He-Huan hung up the phone. After hanging up, her heart was pounding violently. Kong Qiao's retreat and her being followed made her feel that Qin Mo was unreasonable. When she got the script, she only felt that it was well written and that it was a script that would win an award. She didn't know that it was Rong-Yu, but when she found out later, it couldn't change anything. It was her work and her passion. It had nothing to do with her personal life. It was just like what Rong-Yu had said, they were old friends. But in Qin Mo's eyes, all of this seemed especially shameless, right? He Huan bit her thumb and turned her head to the side. Her surroundings were empty, but she felt suffocated. Qin Emo said he loved her, but she didn't feel loved. Instead, she felt bound. If marriage prevented her from having a job she liked, if it was just to give Yi Huan a normal childhood, was it worth it for her to give up so much freedom? Was such a relationship good for Yi Huan? She didn't want to be watched and controlled all the time. She was a person, an independent person, she had her own thing to do. In B City, she might be Qin Mo's accessory. Many people called her Mrs. Qin instead of He Huan. He Huan thought about it quietly. Then, she looked down and laughed at herself. If it was in the past, she could leave. But now, thinking about what Yi Huan said and Yi Huan's smile, she couldn't leave. Maybe she was wrong, or maybe she wasn't suitable for marriage, and even more so, she and Qin Mo weren't suitable. He should marry an obedient kitten and puppy. Yi Huan closed her eyes and didn't do anything. She just sat on the sofa. When it was almost 6 o'clock, she suddenly jumped up, grabbed her bag, and walked out. She was still a little unwilling to face Qin Mo. She was afraid that she couldn't help but quarrel with him in front of Yi Huan. Chapter 41-59. Yi Huan went downstairs. When she drove out, she brushed past Qin Mo's car. She actually saw him, but she didn't want to face him, so she drove away. She even turned off her phone. If Yi Huan hadn't been in the car, Qin Mo would have forced her to stop or rear-ended her. He had never been a good-tempered man. But with Yi Huan around, he had to care about her feelings. Qin Mo stopped the car, looking upset. Yi Huan was sitting in the back seat. She didn't see Yi Huan, so she said, "Daddy called Mommy, we're going out for dinner." Qin Mo's fingers gripped the steering wheel, and the veins on his fingers popped out. He said gently, "Mom still has work to discuss, so we might not be able to have dinner together. How about I take you to Grandpa and Grandma's for dinner?" He wasn't in the mood to cook. Yi Huan thought for a while and said, "Oh." Qin Mo started the car again and drove to his parents' house. It was already dark, and Qin Anlan and Yi Liangqiu were about to have dinner when they saw their son and granddaughter coming back. They looked around for a long time but didn't see Yi Huan. Then, they realized that the two of them were probably having a fight again. The two elders didn't say anything, for they loved their son dearly. They knew that Qin Mo hadn't been in a good relationship all these years, but only one knew how cold the water was. He didn't want to give up, and others couldn't persuade him otherwise. Moreover, they had watched Yi Huan grow up, so they couldn't let it drag on. After dinner, Yi Liangqiu asked her son, "Did you and Yi Huan fight again?" Qin Mo wasn't in a good mood, so he said calmly, "No, she's probably angry with me." Yi Liangqiu looked at her son. Qin Mo said, "She wants to make a movie, and Rong Yu wrote the script." Yi Liangqiu was stunned. She had heard of Rong Yu, who used to be Yi Huan's crush. Sigh, her son had been outstanding since he was young, but he still had an unrequited love for her for a long time. But now, Yi Liangqiu had a different opinion. She said softly, "Things are different now. Yi Huan didn't know when the script was sent to us, and she happened to pick it. Think about it, she's the director, so she can't act on impulse. But you are, right?" Qin Mo looked up. "Mom. I know you won't be happy if I say this, but Qin Mo, you were too lenient in the past. I don't know if you were angry at her for letting her go. Now that she's back, you're watching her so closely. You know Yi Huan's personality. You'll only force her to leave." Yi Liangqiu glanced at his son. Don't treat her like a pet. Let me ask you, what do you like about Hehuan? Isn't it because you like her independence and personality? Otherwise, why can't you fall for any of the beautiful women out there? Qin Mo didn't say anything. He looked up and said softly, Mom, sometimes I want to give up. If you don't want to, it means you still love her. Don't be a son, you're just like your father. Look at how strong your brother's desire to live was. He survived a game of chess. Yi Liangqiu secretly dished her eldest son. You went to Cher's house to court her when you were in your teens. Your suffering is nothing. Qin Mo was speechless for a moment. After a while, he said softly, Yi Huan can stay here tonight. I'll go look for Yi Huan. I can't be at ease with her phone switched off. She was angry when she saw Kong Chao. Now that she knew he was watching her, she was even angrier. Actually, he was angry too. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 4160. After hearing Qin Mo's words, Yi Liangqiu thought for a moment and said, That's fine. It's not reassuring to have her phone turned off. Besides, Hehuan has been abroad all year round, so she might not be familiar with the local environment. Try to find her and contact her friends. Mom, I know, Qin Mo said calmly. After that, he took the car keys and left. It was already late at night, and B City was bustling. Qin Mo sat in the car and called Hehuan's assistant and a few friends as he drove, but they all said that they weren't together. He went to her studio and locked the door from the outside, so she shouldn't be inside. When Qin Mo went downstairs, it was already 10:30 p.m., but there was still no news from Hehuan. He went back to his apartment in the city, although he knew that she wouldn't go there. When he opened the door, she wasn't there. Qin Mo sat on the sofa and smoked. He picked up his phone and called Hehuan, but her phone was still turned off. He finished the cigarette, thought for a moment, and dialed Kong Chao's number. After a while, Kong Chao answered. President Qin. Qin Mo was silent for a while. I heard that Su Mo and Hehuan are in contact, right? Give me Su Mo's number. Kong Chao said to wait for a moment, then hung up and sent a message to his WeChat. Kong Chao called Su Mo directly, and Su Mo picked up. Then everything went smoothly. Hehuan is with me. She drank too much. Su Mo hesitated and said, President Qin, why don't you let her stay at my place for a night? I think she's in a bad mood. Su Mo said as she looked at Hehuan, who was lying on the floor, worriedly. Hehuan couldn't hold her liquor very well. She was drunk after a few glasses, and Hehuan couldn't move her. Just as she was worrying about it, Qin Mo called. However, they obviously had a conflict. Now that Qin Mo was here, he didn't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. It was useless for Su Mo to hesitate and worry, because it was impossible for Qin Mo to let Hehuan live alone in someone else's house. He was a very possessive and manipulative man. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken Rong Yu's matter so seriously, let alone obstructing him from behind. Su Mo hung up the phone. Hehuan was leaning on the bar counter, talking nonsense. If one listened carefully, they could still hear some of it. It was probably related to the film that Kong Chao was going to act in. Su Mo sighed softly. After thinking about it, she decided to call Kong Chao. Kong Chao asked her where she was and wanted to pick her up. She was unwilling, but he insisted. After that, Su Mo told him. Qin Mo arrived rather quickly. When he arrived, he didn't look too good. He first glanced at Hehuan, then thanked Su Mo, thank you for accompanying her. Otherwise, who knows where she would have gone tonight. Sue Mo smiled. I've known director he since I was in the United States. Although we're not close, we get along quite well. There's no need to thank me, she said in a low voice. Treat her well. Also, she's very talented. I have a friend named Wen Yuan, who is also talented, but she's willing to be a good wife and mother for President Yi. President Qin, if the time is up, director he will come back on her own. Why don't you let her fly now? She will come back when she's tired. Qin Mo thought about it. What if she doesn't come back? Sue Mo smiled again. Then it must be because she can't feel your love for her. Qin Mo pursed his thin lips into a straight line. After a long time, he murmured, she has never felt it. If she could feel it, she wouldn't like anyone else. Sue Mo didn't say anything more. It was a couple's family business. End of chapter. It was probably because the Kong family's mother and son had always been with her when she was most helpless and vulnerable. Sue Mo was a conscientious person. She liked Mrs. Kong and didn't want her to be lonely before she passed away. She ran her fingers lightly over Concho's flesh and asked, is there really nothing to be done? Can you go abroad for surgery? What do you want to, change it for me? As she spoke, she started sobbing. She felt something warm on the side of her neck. That was Kong Chiao's tears. Sue Mo felt sad. She had never seen him like this. She didn't know why, but her heart softened. End of this chapter. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.